Greetings, everyone. This is our fourth and final segment, Weather Forecast, where we go into different prophetic revelations that can be found using scripture. Today, we're going to talk about the fate of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church being an institution that has been around for far longer than basically many institutions aside of the world. This is an institution that at one time looked to be close to conquering the entire world. This institution has been intact for a long time. It was around figuratively at a certain time, but now it has manifested and become its own state, a city that sits on 7 hills. We're going to talk about that city, Rome. We're going to talk about the Vatican, and we're going to talk about their destiny according to scripture. Just giving you the end of the presentation, basically spoiler alert, it's not going to be a good end. And for that reason, let's talk about why we have to discuss this institution. This is not me picking on anyone who's a Catholic. This is not me picking on people who are a part of the Catholic Church. But this is talking about the truth. The truth is that this institution was corrupt from the beginning. This institution was an intentional effort to derail the gospel of Christ, to change to change the meaning and to turn it into something else. This something else, though, believe it or not, was actually prophesied about inside of scripture long before the Catholic Church became the power that it is today or even existed. So let's talk about this. First, we're going to talk about the crimes of the Catholic Church. The reason why I want to start with this is because I want you to understand I'm not picking on Catholics for the heck of it. There's actually a long history of violence and of persecution and of colonialism and of co-signing the transatlantic slave trade. This institution has been around for a long time, and probably more than any other institution in the world has more blood on its hands. So this institution, known as the Catholic Church, has killed tens of millions of people all over the course of history through wars, massacres, through colonialism, through persecution campaigns, all of the above. They also co-opted what we know today of Christianity. Christianity, the message that came from the apostles of Yeshua, these apostles went into the world to share a good message. But that message was very much co-opted from an early stage. And that co-optation, believe it or not, was actually predicted and prophesied in scripture. Now, they changed the message into one that would give them power. Now we have understanding when we say Christianity that we're talking about people who use and manipulate the scriptures, manipulate the sacrifice of Yeshua for their own power. They also did something that many of us have noticed probably, whether it's from the holidays or from the imagery. That is, they have mixed this word, Christianity, they've mixed this faith with Babylonian religion. Something else we'll get into. I would argue that this is actually the biggest co-op in history because literally every single thing that you might associate with being Christianity has nothing to do with the people who actually taught it originally, with the Messiah who actually died, has nothing to do with that. Everything from the holidays, everything from the crosses, everything from these saints that we see, so many aspects of what we call Christianity have, again, nothing to do with the actual gospel. So let's talk about the history of that co-optation. And all the sources that I took for this presentation will be in the description. Today, we're going from a discussion that was on the cross, or what we call the crucifix. The story of the cross as a religious symbol begins in, no, it doesn't begin in the Bible. It doesn't begin in Jerusalem. It actually begins in ancient Babylon. Upon Nimrod's death, his wife, Semiramis, exalted her infant son, Tammuz, as Nimrod reborn. God-king worship became quickly entrenched among the ancient Babylonians in the Tau symbol, the first character of Tammuz. Name became a key symbol in Babylonian worship. It is historically undisputable that the Tau was an integral part of pagan religious worship and pre-Christian culture. The cross was sewn into pagan priest costumes, worn by Vestal virgins, and adorned pagan temples. Now, the Tau various forms such as the T, and would sometimes incorporate a circle representing the sun, an integral part of the Babylonian mystery religion. Various names including Marduk, Baal, Beelzebub, Baal worship, a continuation of the Babylonian religion, was what God rebuked ancient Israel for when they did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. It was in service to this pagan deity that ancient Israel sacrificed their infant children as burning sacrifices. This is listed in Jeremiah 32:35. Baal worship was a terrible abomination in God's sight, but Nimrod worship spread throughout the ancient world. Nimrod, reborn as Tammuz, was associated with the Tau symbol and the pre-Christian pagan worship of the ancient Babylonians, Orientals, Philistines, and Egyptians. So many things that we don't necessarily question, but they don't come, again, from the message. They don't come from the scripture. They come directly from the pagan world. So here we go. This is a description. It says that over time, the pagan Roman emperor became the Pope. The pagan Roman Senate became the College of Cardinals. The pagan Roman imperial governors became the archbishops. The pagan Roman provincial governors became the bishops. The pagan Roman civitas became the priests. The pagan Roman Vestal virgins became the nuns. And with that, the Roman Catholic Church was up and running. All of this provides significant background information as we make our way into Revelation 17. By the way, this came from another source that will be listed in the description. So we set a foundation as far as what the Roman Catholic Church is and what they did as far as taking over and co-opting the message of the truth, the message of the sacrifice of Yeshua. They co-opted it from a very early stage to the point where people, when they hear Christian, they don't even think of the actual message. They think of these people in their robes. They think of the people who are offsprings of them, that is the Protestant Church. Things have been so co-opted to a point where most people have actually absolutely no idea as far as what the actual message is. So, as I said, this was predicted inside of the Bible. This was predicted inside of Scripture, particularly in the book of Revelations. We're going to read from Revelation 17. Let's get started with verse 1. Then one of the angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of sexual immorality, and those who live on the earth became drunk with the wine of her sexual immorality. And he carried me away into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemies, names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls, holding in her hand a cup full of abominations and of unclean things of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the world. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the witnesses of Yeshua. When I saw her, I wondered greatly, and the angel said to me, Why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman, of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10. Going to verse 18. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. And those who live on the earth, whose names have been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains upon which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he remains a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received the kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. And he said to me, The waters which you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples and multitudes, and nations and languages. And the 10 horns which you saw in the beast, these will hate the prostitute and will make her desolate and naked. And they will eat her flesh and will burn her up with fire. For Yahuwah has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of Yah are fulfilled. The woman whom you saw was the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. Okay, so many things that we should talk about as far as this, how this goes. Number one, you hear prophecy of a woman who's on the beast. This woman, we know, is not just a person, it's also a geographical location, and we know this because we're told by scripture that she sits on 7 mountains. Very relevant where the Vatican is located. As you see, Rome. I'll probably pronounce these wrong, but let's give it a go. Kernau, Viminal, Capitoline, Escaline, Palatine, Celian, and Aventine. These are the 7 hills of Rome. And as you see, the city of Rome sits on 7 hills. No other city in this world actually matched this description. So that's one indicator that Rome, the Vatican, the Catholic Church is the one who's being talked about in Scripture. Now, some people believe, and I do not say this definitively, but I do think it's interesting, where the Scripture also talks about that this represents 7 kings, that these are the last 7 popes, and the 8th being the current pope. So as you see, since the Catholic Church the Vatican, since it became a separate state, as you know, Rome is basically a city-state. Since that date, there have been 7 popes and 1 currently, right? So if you go from the 7 popes and go to the current pope, he would match the description of the 8th king, they say, the one who's basically going to hand over all power to the beast. Now, this would mean that the current pope, if this is true, if this interpretation is true, that would mean that the current pope will be the last pope. Many people are advancing that that is the case. I say it could be the case. Certainly, if it is the case, that means that there's not a lot of time left. In fact, the Protestant Reformation did not wipe out the teachings of the Catholic Church. Many of them passed on. They might have gotten rid of some of the most asinine aspects of the religious worship, but they did not get rid of them all. And so much of the Protestant faith also comes from paganism. So we should understand that that's not just the Catholic Church. It's the church worldwide. That is the multitude of nations, the peoples, all of which have basically been taken in by this whore Babylon. I just want to give you some images because there's a lot of evidence that the Vatican and the Catholic Church puts out that will show you that they really don't worship Yah. They really don't worship Yeshua. As you see right here, this is the benediction hand gesture. And if you look to the left, you will see that is a Baphomet. Now, I'm not going to assume you know what Baphomet is, although many of you probably do, but just in case you don't, Baphomet is the incarnation of Lucifer. Baphomet is basically the entity that was worshipped by the Knights Templar. Knights Templar later on become the Freemasons and basically are ingrained to many of the things in our society today. And as you see, Baphomet, the Baphomet symbol has the hands pointing up and then the hands down below. What this represents is as above, so down below. Now, as you see, the Catholic Church consistently has done this hand gesture, and they've depicted their Jesus, because their Jesus is not Yeshua, but they've depicted their Jesus as doing these same hand gestures. Is it a coincidence? Let's look at some more imagery. I know what these symbols are. These are, of course, the Satan symbols. These symbols are well known throughout the world to be representations of Lucifer. Now, is this a coincidence, or if you look to the far right, is the 666 symbol that the Pope right there is doing with his hands a coincidence? I would argue not. But let's say it is a coincidence and go to these next images. If you look right here, you'll see some more imagery coming from the Vatican. There's so much, honestly. I could not find it all. I could not show everything I could find, but these are some big ones. So if you see to the far left, this is actually an auditorium inside of the Vatican. And you will see that the auditorium appears as a serpent. Look to the right. What you will see is an aerial view of the Vatican. As you see from an aerial view, and if you don't see it clearly, the image next to it to the right actually show it with some color. That is a serpent. Most people can see that is clearly a serpent. And at that, from the shape of it, it would appear a serpent that is actually carrying something or pregnant with something. So that is going directly to prophecy if you think about the role of the Catholic Church. That is to hand over all authority to the beast. Here's the last images I want to show. So if you see, this is their Messiah. This is the Jesus that they have taught to the world. And their Messiah is not our Messiah. We know that this image, this representation has nothing to do with Christ, right? If you do look to the right, you see also their image of what they say is basically Christ rising from hell. Nothing of this actually comports with who Christ is or what he did. Another image showing that the person that they're worshiping is not the person of the Bible, not the person of the scripture. And then I just want to go back to the first slide. I showed you something right here. This is the Pope's coat of arms. And as you see, this is actually a fleur-de-lis. We're going to get into fleur-de-lis a little bit later, but know that fleur-de-lis have a lot of meaning behind them, and their meanings are not something that is good. A lot of it goes right to Babylon. A lot of it goes right to Babylonian worship. We also know fleur-de-lis were actually what the French used to brand Africans, particularly in the state of Louisiana. I would say that's for a reason, but we'll get into that in another video. Back to the purpose of this presentation, the fate of the Catholic Church. If you look in scripture, particularly in Revelation 17, Vatican, they're going to turn against the harlot. They're going to turn against this incarnate of the world system. They're going to turn against her because she's no longer useful to them. Because we know that in the end, going to be one person, one entity that's going to be worshipped, and there's not going to be room for this entity of the Catholic Church or the Vatican any longer. So that's basically the future that is prophesied about the Catholic Church, that it will be made desolate, naked, and the world will eat her flesh up and burn her with fire. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. I will see you all in the next one.